Thanks for reminding me there, Ashley. So we'll let Ashley continue to try, and the other Ashley continue to try and connect with us here. And let's go back to the course book. So here we are, I've talked a little bit about the circadian rhythms, and we go into this idea that we have this annual cycle demonstrated by the fact that we have and it's off because, and we have different experiences across because it's unlike Larry Niven's ring world, our orbit is not circular, it's elliptical. It's like like a watermelon. And so the sun is at one of the nodes and the planet goes around. So in July, we're 152 million kilometers from the sun. And in January, we're a little closer. You would think it'd be warmer, but it's the tilt of this, it's the tilt from northern and southern hemisphere that actually gives us our seasons. But we have this, in terms of the sun being closer. This is the circannual rhythms, not the circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms are demonstrated here with this little graphic that's in your course book. And you go through the day. Let's start right at noon here. Here we are. We're probably, we're right around here. We're at 1:43. You're about, let's say, 45 minutes to having your best coordination. So if you're going to go play basketball, the best time to do that is right after class. So now you know that. And then your fastest reaction time at 3:30 there. That's actually supposed to be the end of class, but at 5 o'clock, apparently our best, cardiomuscular thing. It's when we have that going on. Our highest blood pressure is at 6:30. Highest body temperature is at 7. This might be the time of night when it kind of feels hot no matter what. And then at 9 o'clock, usually that's when melatonin starts, the natural production of melatonin starts to produce in the body and starts to put us asleep. That builds up, we decide to go to bed. At around 2 a.m. is when we get our deepest sleep, although we're going to recognize that, we go into deep sleep all through the night. At 4:30 a.m., because of that resting state, our body temperature is at its lowest. When you get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or get a glass of water or let the dog out or whatever you're doing, and you feel it's cold inside, it's not the house. It's well, unless your wood heat and you ran out of wood, but it's not the house, it's you. It's you. So that's why we have house coats and put those on, because I'm cold. The environment is not cold. It's around 4:30ish or that time, 3 to 5. Our bodies are as cold as they're going to get. At 6:30 is when there's actually a sharp increase in our blood pressure, getting ready for the day, throwing blood into the system. And at 7:30, melatonin is no longer being secreted in our body, and therefore the brain wakes up. At 10, this is very true for me. At 10 o'clock is my highest alertness. I have a middle day. This right now is like the worst time of day for me. I'm not sure how. This is right around 2:30. It's nap time, and for me. And but I'm old, and so I saw some nods. So maybe you're old too. You look young, but maybe you're old. Old souls. And so I'm there. I am, and in the afternoon, it's like, wow, that's the time. I don't want to think. I don't want to do anything. I just want to go to bed. And then right around 7 o'clock, bang, I'm up again and I'm flying. So what about you folks? What are the kind of wake sleep cycles for you? Let's get actually some conversation going on here. So Ashley think either. We'll leave John out right now. I'm not sure if John's connected. Oh, maybe not. Ashley, what's your sleep wake cycle? What's your day like?
I'm an early bird. I feel like I don't know, 5:30ish. I'm kind of up and ready to go. By
Yeah.
6 o'clock, I usually get going. I feel like I'm a mid-morning peak with coordination. Like it was saying that 2:30 was peak coordination for, I guess, most people, but
Yeah.
I feel like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. I feel like I'm at my best.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if it's a morning, if you're, let's say you're playing darts.
I'm gonna go with 9
Why
a.m.
I come up with sports like that, I don't know. But your best dart throw is going to happen at 10 a.m. It ain't going to happen at 2:30.
No, I feel like mid-afternoon into like the later afternoon, I feel like I kind of slow down with everything.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, darts is probably a bad example. I played darts just the other day I can count on my hand how many times I played darts. And his rule was every 10 darts is a beer.
Oh.
I couldn't even keep up. That wasn't good. And that interferes with circadian rhythms, by the way. Jordan, what about you? What's your day like?
I usually wake up around 7-ish. And then I feel like pretty hyper and like alert at 10 to like 12.
Yep.
If I'm working, I get sleepy, like you said, around 2:33-ish.
Yep.
And then when we close, when we end up closing at night, I get more awake like right after I leave. And then I'm up until like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Well, eating is such a big, you're eating, we're going to get into that later on when we digest things, what happens to the pancreas, what happens to sugar metabolism. And every time we eat it's interesting because truthfully, we often see, although obesity is a problem related to people eating in front of the TV, it's actually also a problem when people eat to stay awake. Because it is really an effective way. I'm going to load up with sugar and and keep myself alert all day. And so people can become grazers. They can just be eating all day. And so that's particularly problematic with COVID right now because people are at home. So it's not like you're limited to your lunchbox or, whatever's you can steal out of the fridge. Like you have whatever you have at home. Like it's not snack time. It's like, let's reheat that pizza. It used to be just a bag of peanuts to get me by. Now I'm like, I think maybe some potatoes with this would be really good. So, okay, Jaden, what's your day like?
I normally get up around like 7:30ish. I have to be to work at 7, so during the weekday I get up at 6. But I'm definitely not awake until probably like 7.
Are you a chemical ingester in the morning? Like coffee?
I'm not.
Wow. What does it? Was it just you just come out of it all on your own, drink some water and
I drink a lot of water, but I think the kids kind of just either you're awake or you're not.
Like when they're screaming at your face, it's kind of hard to stay asleep. Good morning. So
they have way more energy than I do in the morning.
Yeah. Ashley and Jordan, do you drink coffee or you?
I drink Aroma Joe's every day. It's so bad.
Because you work there, right?
Well, I work at Bath and Body Works, but it's on my way.
It's right there.
Yeah.
And you're supporting local business.
That's right. I have one right now.
Yeah, it's your giving one for the team.
That's right.
What about you, Ashley? Are you drinking that coffee in the morning or?
Yeah, I'm a big coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably have like 3 or 4 cups of coffee in the morning and maybe like maybe 1 or 2 in the like early
Oh,
afternoon. I'm not proud of it, but
oh, no. Be proud. Be proud. You're supporting an entire industry.
yeah.
So this is good. This is good. I'm at about 2 pots a day.
Oh,
So I'm about to, this one's pretty cold right now and not much left of it. And I'm gonna have to brew another pot here. I just like the taste. I like the taste.
do you
And,
drink it black or do you have cream with it?
Hmm?
Do you drink it black or do you have cream with it too or sugar?
Cream and sugar at the worst. I can, white sugar, and I use fake chemistry experiment whitener. Just nothing natural at all. Nothing natural.
Oh, that's too
Actually
funny.
thinking about having a line put in right up to my office and just drip it.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to do it. I like all different kinds of coffee. I like it black too, but usually kind of a sugar bomb. Probably why I crash in the afternoon, because when that goes away. So, but there was one time in my psych class, the class was we were sharing these stories about coffee drinking, and there was addicts like myself, and there was people like Jaden who were more health conscious, and and we had this sort of discussion, how well is it bad for you, and we tried to find, I thought maybe it increased your heart rate, or it made your blood vessels explode or something like that, and it doesn't. There's apparently not really, in order to have any damage from caffeine, you have to have like some unbelievable amount of coffee, like it wouldn't even be physically possible.
Good
It's
to
like
know.
one of those years ago, there was a study that came out about, I'm not sure if some of you, I'm not even sure how many years ago this was. When you have that many behind you, it could be decades. And it's when saccharin was an artificial sweetener, and they outlawed it because it was said to cause cancer. Now, the study that now saccharin tasted horrible. It tasted like fake sugar, and so I was okay for it to go away. But the actual study that they quoted, we ended up looking this up in one of my classes, and in order for you to ingest the equivalent amount of saccharin that they gave the rats that developed cancer, you'd have to have 20 pounds a day. Those poor rats, they just got, injected with saccharin. I think 20 pounds a day of celery would probably give you cancer. That's a lot of celery. Okay, I'm distracted. That's how I keep awake. So we're back here. So there is a question in the quiz that relates to this diagram. So you'll be coming back to that. Now, we're at the point in this class, a point in this content for me to introduce my absolute favorite part of the brain, because it's just so fun to say, and that is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. You can't say that without Mary Poppins coming into your head, because it's damn close. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, Anyway, have you ever seen Mary Poppins? Yeah, we got 1, 2. Jaden, have you seen Mary Poppins?
I'm not sure.
Let's just say we have already calculated your final grade.
I've definitely seen it then.
Okay, so suprachiasmatic nucleus is and let's bring this all together here. This is the cool stuff of biopsychology. We talked about the eye recently, and we had the complexity of the retina. and that light passed through the retina. It activated the rods and cones. It went up. And then we had these collections of ganglion cells. And the ganglion cells, remember the term gang, we sort of, it's like groups and areas of the activated cell would sort of like come together. It almost gives us the resolution or the sharpness of our image. But some of those ganglion cells are actually geared towards sending signals to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, so some of them, when we look at the visual pathway, we maybe look that up, but we have the eyes come in and it comes to the optic chiasm, and then it splits off again, and like the right side of the retina on my right eye crosses over and it's mapped out on the left side of my occipital lobe, all of that, clever stuff. But right underneath the optic chiasm, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, the suprachiasmatic nucleus receives information from our source of light, which is our eyes, and calculates the time, the day, and biologically sends signals and manages the rest of the brain in terms of its ability to stay awake. So essentially the suprachiasmatic nucleus manages our circadian rhythms, hence why it is so important for astronauts to close the shutters and why they put the bright lights on during the day in the sub. It's also, just to throw out there in terms of industrial psychology, bright lights tend to activate the suprachiasmatic nucleus. So you will never see a factory, nor will you see a Walmart with dim lights. You walk into Walmart, it's almost uncanny how bright the lights are. And the reason for that is they want you to be alert. They want you to be aware of all those falling prices so you can get out of the way, I suppose, and to buy something. And so, so the bright lights are used, and the research done on in the world of industrial psych has focused a lot of energy on that, no pun intended, with the actual amount of light that somebody has in their area affects the person's productivity. So in factories, you go, if you ever went to the floor over at a mill or something like that, blinding, almost blinding, how bright the lights are, trying to keep people awake. And so sadly, we can't use that for sleepy driving because the light, truth be told, if you open up the cabin lights in your car, like you put the light up on the dome light up, it will help you stay awake, but it also reduces some of your vision. So there's because it's reflecting off the front, but if there was a way to be able to do, there is none, but a way to have that happen. That's actually other ways of stimulating. Of course, you've probably done this. You've been driving along and you're tired, so you're going from station to station, then you're opening the window, and then you're closing the window and turning the heat on, turning the air conditioning on, just doing whatever you're doing to change the atmosphere. Having a conversation, that's really good. Anything that will sort of engage the body will help you stay awake when you have that sort of monotony going on. Okay, so all of that is, all the visual stuff is affecting the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And so that's a here we have the little graphic here. Oops, looking in the wrong place. And here we have this graphic when the suprachiasmatic, here's, you think about right around here is where the optic chiasm is. We have the receptor cells in the retina, sending the ganglion cells, sending information here to the optic chiasm and then into the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it ultimately affects the pineal gland, which regulates the release of melatonin, which is a chemical that reduces our alertness. And so we have that as the mechanism by which, so the suprachiasmatic nucleus knows when we're supposed to be falling asleep because it's been regulating that light all the time. Now, heck, just occurred to me, in utero, not only because they're not as affected by light, there is some light that gets into babies when they're in utero, or it's not, they can't see through, but there's some glow, but it's not enough to really do that. For a number of reasons, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is not really functional until after the child is born, because then that part of the brain gets activated by sunlight, activated by whatever ambient light is there. And so that won't happen until after the child is born. So for the reasons of development, but also because there's no circadian rhythm in utero, and for a period of time after the child is born, they sleep all the time. You know, there's not really a mechanism fully in place yet to wake the child up. Now, there's also a lot of work going on. Remember when we talked about how much neurology is going on? We had thousands of neurons being developed every minute. The baby's busy developing when they're sleeping that much time. So, but it also has to do with a relatively less developed suprachiasmatic nucleus. Now, switching gears for just a little bit, we look at this, we have a wakefulness and the circadian rhythms that's managed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and we have sleep, which we spend about 1/3 of our life, we spend asleep. And we have some, and sleep itself is, interestingly enough, not defined by when somebody starts snoring or when you can't rouse them or something like that. It's technically defined by brain waves, and that's where psychology sort of, that's our operational definition here. So we see over here what the brain looks like in the top left-hand corner here. We have the brain waves. These are kind of, if you put an electrode on the outside of your brain, and on the outside of your skull, you can pick up on the general area electrical activity, and you got a lot of it going on. As a person starts to fall asleep, there's still some activity, but almost like it's the buzz that's going on, not quite as relaxed. Now, what happens, interestingly, as we go into stage 2 and possibly into stage 3, we're looking at that, is this is the area of two things. One is lucid dreaming. We can actually go into a period of time where we're doing some sort of REM sleep, but we're also aware that we're sleeping. There's this inner awareness. I'm not sure if you've ever had that experience, but you're sort of you're aware that you're sleeping, and you can there's actually a whole field of therapy that's going on right now about controlling your dreams in order to actively work out issues that you have to deal with. But there's again, I like funny things that happen in psychology, and so there's what can also happen as the body is going into that first and second level of sleep. The brain the brain itself restricts these sensations. In fact, you can see it here. It's not deliberately outlined in this graphic, but if you look again over here, you see where it says from the suprachiasmatic nucleus, you see that green that goes down? That's one of the arrows. That's one of the areas of influence, is when the body is going to sleep, we want to make sure that the body doesn't act out. So we get into this area of what's called sleep paralysis, where we feel that we don't have as much conscious movement over our bodies. Now that some have said that that's the reason why, that's the justification for why people who have claimed to have been abducted by aliens feel that they can't move. And the psychological perspective of that is, well, you can't move because you're having a dream and you have sleep paralysis going on, not because you're strapped to the examination table. And so that's sort of the psychological. We know that that's wrong and that aliens are actually running the world, but that's what psychologists like to say is going on. And so I'm kidding, by the way. But the other thing that happens, sometimes what will happen is a signal as we're kind of like on the fence of falling asleep, sometimes a signal gets through and we experience what's called a hypnic jerk. It's another one of those. A hypnic jerk is when you're falling asleep, then you go, and you're like that, and suddenly you get this spike of energy that comes. It's almost like a short circuit of some kind. A little spike went down your spinal cord, and there you are, and like oh, okay, leg kicked out or whatever. It's a great way to get revenge on your partner. Just, I was falling asleep. I didn't mean to kick you. Back over here, get away from dad. This is why I'm not a therapist anymore, giving advice like that. So we go into sleep, and here we have stage 1. Stage 2, we start to see some things like sleep spindles. That's what, the body is definitely falling asleep. And then stage 3 and 4, this is the restorative sleep that we're into. These are the brain waves that are going on that we are engaged in. Rest, there's a chemical realignment, there's a resetting of potentials in our brains, there's cleaning up of things, the blood system's going through, cleaning up all the waste materials. The factory is basically closed, and the cleanup crew has come in, and they're cleaning up the brain and getting it ready for the next day. At the same time, for reasons that are still somewhat a mystery, but we sort of have an understanding of it, every once in a while we go into this, it's called paradoxical sleep because it's a paradox. Why are we not responsive to the outside world, but yet our brain waves look very much like stage 1 sleep? And that's called REM sleep. And REM stands for rapid eye movement. And this is the stage of sleep that is most commonly associated with dreams. It is not the only one. Dreams occur in stage 1 and 2. The electrical activity can happen, and that's where we get people who are sleepwalking, people in deep sleep can't sleepwalk because they have sleep paralysis going, unless they have a disorder. And sleepwalking, if it's problematic, is a disorder. And just to expel the whole thing, if somebody's ever sleepwalking, wake them up and help them get back to bed. You're not supposed to just let it go. They're not gonna, because if they're truly experiencing a dysfunction of the system of sleep paralysis and they're acting out a dream, they might think they're walking along a field when in fact they're, walking down the stairs. And that can be, to say the least, problematic. Oh, we have our other Ashley can hear us, and I think she can see, she left a message for us saying, and she has lucid dreams every night. So very cool, very cool. Thanks for participating there. I'm recording this anyway. So back to the course book here, we have the different kinds of sleep, and we sleep because, for a number of reasons, and it's because the GABA, which is a neurotransmitter, accumulates in the brain, and we want to lose some of that accumulation. without that, we don't perform as well without that cleanup on memory tasks, and we're more likely to make mistakes. And the REM component, the deep sleep and REM components are mostly associated with what some psychologists feel is that there is actually an active mechanism of dealing with the day's stresses. And we may do that simply by letting the brain relax and cleaning up and stuff like this, but they feel that the actual activity associated with REM sleep is the brain organizing thing. It's sort of, all the stuff is built up on the desk, and then at night we start filing, start putting things away. And it lends some evidence, truthfully, to the notion of, if we go to Freud and we think about Freud's perspective, who was clearly not a biopsychologist, although he was a physician, not a biopsychologist per se, but he looked at that dreams were sort of a window into something that had meaning in and of themselves. Now that meaning, according to Freud and according to, let's say, Carl Jung, were symbolic and universal. So that, the notion that dreams dipped into a spiritual world, and that's fine. That's fine. And I have sort of a contention that there's probably some truth to that, but we don't necessarily even need that. We can understand that dreams represent themselves in a way that are trying to address some of the issues that are going on in your day. And it's not so much that the dream itself is important, but that it's bringing it to the forefront, particularly if you can train yourself to remember your dreams, to help process some of these things in a way. So even if you're a strict biological based person, we could actually look at dreams and say, all right, these are just random firings, and your brain is interpreting them by creating a storyline. And the reason why the storyline sometimes jumps around all over the place is because these are random firings. But then we can consciously ask, well, of all the things that your brain could have done with those random firings, why did they place you in that Volkswagen Bug hanging from a tree? Why'd you do that? Of all the things that you could have done, why that? And that might be an interesting conversation. And so that'll be, so we still have that notion that our brains are active, they're doing something, we can talk about it, and then we can launch from there. Even though there's this other non-biological school of thought that looks at dreams as something very significant accessing in the spiritual world. Now then, the course book, kind of dabbling in what covers so comprehensively inside of the course, inside of the textbook, is this process right here of how the brain stimulates itself. And I'm going to leave that to you to read. Sort of this process right here, where we see the distribution of GABA, which we need to get rid of at night, and acetylcholine and histamine, which activates the system. Now, it's interesting to contemplate that because our brain needs chemicals to stay awake, it needs the activation of these chemicals to remain alert and awake, that if you think about it, the normal state of the brain is to be asleep. And then you add these chemicals to wake it up. And when those chemicals are no longer released, the brain falls asleep. So the brain itself, in a way, its natural state of being is unconscious. And it's our activating of the brain that brings it to the forefront. And we do that here, and we talk about, here's where I introduce coffee. And coffee itself has a really interesting, because It activates the release of chemicals. It increases the firing of nerve fibers by blocking adenosine. It blocks adenosine receptors that would normally slow the cells down. Now so adenosine, and we didn't really go into this as much that we always sort of explain neuron firing on the, neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic gap and they activate on the other side, and it builds up a ion potential, and then when it reaches a certain level, the neuron fires off. But the truth is there are some neurotransmitters that cause the ion channels to shut down. It's a shutting down of the nervous system. Remember, we had parasympathetic and sympathetic systems. So there's a whole nervous system that shuts down the firing of neurons. And so this is basically like, if you think about those keys flying across the room and they fit into that lock, so you have the neurotransmitter fitting into the neurotransmitter receptor. Caffeine goes in there and it's like putting gum inside of where that key is going to go, and it keeps those chemicals that are trying to slow down the brain so the brain becomes more active. So it's not like the caffeine is not a stimulant, it blocks the sedative. That's an interesting indirect way. So individuals who take stimulants might have a much more quick reaction. Caffeine has a little bit slower reaction because it's indirect, like that. And kind of finishing off here with other ways that we stay awake. And here is like Jaden was feeling tired just a second ago, so she turned off her camera, took a little walk, helps stay awake. I'm totally into that. So you move around, you limit your distractions, helping to focus, active listening, kind of thing, asking questions, asking for examples, integrating information into your learning. And truthfully, when you doodle, if you're into that, just writing notes or whatever, that helps you stay awake. So this is Mark's lesson on how to stay awake during other people's classes. I know you don't have trouble staying awake during mine. I'm just helping my colleagues here. That's what because I know they're boring. So we move into, there's our little graphic there. We move into the discussion and the quiz. And I want you to maybe share, including my class, if you want, if you can come up with an example of, when I was, my class or somebody, or you're in a lecture. I mean, I think teachers are taught a little bit better. I had, when the new technology for drones came out, for those little flying things, I was like, man, we had drones before. I had 2 teachers in high school who were drones. They were just, holy cow. I can imitate them, but it's not really as good when it's on Zoom. But it's just, the sort of like the next thing we're going to talk about. Have you had one of those? You had one of those teachers? It's like, holy cow. Accounting is another profession. Not to pick on accountants, but yeah. So if you've had, but yet sometimes, and admittedly, some of the instructors that I had were brilliant. I wanted to know what they knew. I mean, they knew their stuff, and they weren't good teachers, but man, were they smart. Or you knew you had to get this stuff down because there was an exam coming up. So you have to kind of find ways to engage in these kinds of things. So another little interaction here. When I said you've had boring teachers, both of you nodded your head. So without naming names, can you tell me what your descriptions are? Let's just go with Jaden first this time. Tell me about boring
Um,
teachers.
I had I don't know if it was, I think it might have been my first semester. She just had like a really monotone voice and she went really fast. So it was like I had to pay attention so I could like get all the material down.
Yeah.
But she, like wouldn't stop for questions or like if we needed like example. Yeah, she just kept going on and on. Like we'd ask for examples and stuff to like relate to the material. And it was just like hard to, I don't know, interact in the class because it was just her talking the whole time.
Yep. Yep. And I'll admit there's been, I got called out the last semester, the last spring when we were, boy, I hope I'm talking like it's, remember when we used to meet face to face? You know, last spring, right, pretty close to when we were about to close, right before COVID hit, and young lady in my developmental psych class just stopped me and said, "You need to like ask some questions or something." It just like raised her hand and said, "You need to change your ways," and what I was just trying to get through content, you know, and just to get into that, you know, I've got to get to the end of the slideshow because next week I want to do this or something like that. And it was such a wake up call for a teacher to get that and say, you know, and one of the products of it was I would ask for an example and I wouldn't wait long enough. I would, you know, just I was in a hurry, and like, okay, Jordan, your turn. Your turn. Favorite boring teacher.
I have one right now, not you.
Yeah. No, we're not ever talking about each other
No.
here. That's the thing.
My biology. Well, I don't like biology to begin with.
Yeah.
So that class just bores me. But he's like a very nice man. He just talks very slow, and like during our lectures, he talks the whole time very monotone, and he has like a calming voice, so you kind of get sleepy listening to it. And then when we go into the labs, he just talks the whole time, and we don't really like do anything.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, but
Just a
I don't
stream
like
of
biology
consciousness
anyways.
coming out of them, just sort of.
Yeah. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So
And when you're looking at material like, and it's not when you're looking at big words, complex processes. I mean, just
yeah.
look at look at that brain chart. Really, I could lecture on that, but I know what that's going to be like.
Yeah.
Well, this little green arrow goes over here, and then it goes over here, and then it goes, and it's just really, it doesn't interest me to convey that. And I teach the way I learn, and it's like, there's the graphic, go look at it. I mean, all the arrows are drawn on it, and so I don't tend to lecture on those things, but particularly in a distance point of view, some of these things would be difficult to do and still grip onto people's, you know, what we're talking about is not a well-developed plot, poor character development, and there's no cliffhanger at the end of the episode, you know, so what's holding on to the audience? Okay, well, thank you. And so just kind of go in there and talk about that stuff in the discussion board. Again, the discussion board has been very lenient. You know, you post something and it's just something off the to-do list. Now the quiz, however, has 3 questions. One is about circadian rhythms. The other one is to get into a little bit about jet lag and what that means, flying east or flying west, and what the difference is when we move. Jet lag came around when we were able to travel faster than the Earth. Well, not really faster than the Earth rotated, but we were able to gain and lose hours. You know, when we're on the sailing vessel, it took so long to move through a time zone that we adjusted as we went. Or if you're riding a bike or even riding a car, you're going slow enough that you're going to, although in a car you can get jet lag now because you can go fast enough that you're going get jet lag. And finally, and this has to do with that last piece about what happens. There's a part of the brain that's mentioned in the course book, and certainly it's mentioned in the textbook, about what happens when that deer runs in front of you, and you move from, you're basically wondering, you're just thinking about how comfortable those bed sheets are going to be when you get home. It's late at night and you're driving along and you're just sort of, you're in that kind of highway hypnosis thing. And then something runs out in the road, and let's assume you don't hit it, and runs out in the road, and suddenly you're wide awake. And something has happened in your brain to do that. Something has elicited that emotional response in order and moved you actually into sort of a version of fight or flight to handle that. You're right, like this, and it's almost a yucky feeling because it's like waking up too fast. Like if you get up in the morning, I mean, experiment with that if you want, pick your time that you would normally get up, but instead of this, I'm not sure how you get up, but I do this sort of slow, leisurely thing, like one part of my body leaves the bed at a time. And I usually find my feet somewhere around the coffee machine about an hour later. And but to imagine, like, as soon as you're awake, hop out of bed and just like Jordan was like, never. The dogs would freak out for one thing. And then but it's almost like that it's almost too much of a stimulation, and you're just sort of, and then you just go right back to being tired again. There's no cure for sleepy driving except sleep. We're just, the body is basically saying to you, stop driving. So I say this as this morning my daughter, who was visiting her mom in Arizona, has taken off to drive back, and I worry about her. She says she only does 7 hours a day, but we have that 365 app. Seems to be moving pretty fast for a person who's supposed to be at a rest stop. But speaking of moving very fast, there's our other Ashley. I can see you, Ashley. There you are. Are you driving? No, you're not. I get no audio.
I'm not driving.
Okay, you're not driving.
I have a client in the building and he's at a meeting, so I was able to pop in for a minute.
Well, Ashley, this is everybody else. You can see them now. Everybody, this is Ashley. She's been in our class all this time. She snuck out of her job and she's in her car.
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm working right now, so I'm trying to listen and multitask.
Yeah. Okay, so I was just going over, as you were listening in, I was just going over to with the last quizzes here. So experiencing jet lag, and then the last one is, what happens when you have a deer that runs out in front of you. And so okay, then now Ashley, you've been on all this time, right?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, you've been listening.
I've just been listening.
So is there any questions about what we've talked about today or what we're doing?
No questions really. I mean, I did have something to add about the boring teachers thing. I had one that would just like verbatim copy down the notes and put them on the projector, and that would be the class. He wouldn't even like engage verbally.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Okay. How about the everybody doing okay on the labs? I'm about to go in and do a bunch of grading, so hopefully everybody's caught up on the labs. And I've been I held off on chapter 6 because that had not been done yet. a couple weeks ago. And so I'm going to go in, and we'd have no lab this week. And so I'm going to take the opportunity to catch up on some grading with this class. I have 5 going on, so there's a bunch of grading. And but this is a small class. So, small but incredibly cool class. That's how I get good course evaluations. You guys are so cool. Okay, but as you join us for the first time, Ashley, visually, we're at the end of class. This is it. I'm kind of finishing off here. So if there's no other questions, make sure you go into discussions, get that quiz done. And I figure by the end of the week, I'll be done right up until this week in grading, and midterm grades are due. So people are going to be running around doing that. Does that sound like a plan? All right. So I think Jaden and Ashley are actually, you have to go back to work now.
Yes.
Okay. Jaden, are you at work?
No, I'm at home.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was like the teacher's room or something like that.
Only on Wednesdays.
Yep. And Jordan remains in her safe room. Her
In
yellow
my bed.
Is safe.
I think I'm
Okay. Always enjoy these. So have a great rest of the week. Send me if there's any questions on anything, send it to me, and I will see you same time, same channel next week.
Sounds good.
Sound good? All right.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.